Welcome to the third tutorial of PySimpleGUI. This one's going to go hopefully at a brisk pace so you don't get bored. The topic is persistent windows, and by that I mean windows that stay open. And we're going to make one that stays open and modifies other things on the window. Pretty cool stuff. And normally it takes a good amount of code in other GUIs, but not with PySimpleGUI. Alright, let's get going. I've made the fonts larger. I did get that feedback. Import PySimpleGUI. Oops, not a comment. And what we're making, let's sketch it out using the PySimpleGUI design tool. We're making a window that you put two values in, hit an add button, and it will add them and output the value here on the window. So using the same scheme we have in the past, we break it into rows. We have 4 rows. And I've also added some things here in addition to our normal input elements. In answer, I've written in what are called keys, and these will identify these individual values when we are getting results, that the values that come off of a read, and also when we're outputting or changing an element. So keys, that's what those are. So the form, or the window, we said, has a layout. The first line said text. It says add 2 numbers. The next line is our input line. And here we have input text. And as I said, we are adding a key. So we say key equals in1 is what I'm naming this particular input. And there was a text, a plus sign here in between. And then another input. Now there are these things called shortcuts that you can use. So instead of input text, I'm going to say input. That happens to be one. There are also a ton of options on each one of these, and you can see them popping up as I'm typing. And if you ever wonder what those are, then you should go to www.PySimpleGUI.org. When you go there, you will get the PySimpleGUI user's manual, and it's extensive. There are 100 and I forgot what it is now, 180 pages, something like that. It's huge. But if you look over here in the table of contents, there's a section that says elements, and every one of the elements is shown here. So the input elements, I go there, it shows me what kind of a typical call looks like, what it looks like in a window, and then it's got all of the parameters right there. And then, as if that's not enough, there's an explanation of the parameters. And that's good for every element. Text element, there's a ton of options that you can add to text. There are, you can change the color, you can change the background. So come take a look. There's some pretty cool stuff that you can do that it's sort of your superpowers. Okay, back to our window. We have these two input fields, a text plus sign, okay, so that's a text field that's output, and then we need to put a key on that because we're going to output to it, right? And the key, we're going to call this field answer. Okay? Then we have a blank line. So here's how you do a blank line. It's sg.Text with no text. There's your blank line. It's kind of hard, huh? It's simple. It's right there in the name, PySimpleGUI. Our blank line, then we have a button. It's the last bit here. sg. Okay, and it's not a normal button. If we just put button, I'll show you what a button closes the window, and so we don't want to close the window. Normally, OK, submit, all of those things close the window. So we have what's called a read button, and that will keep the window open. And on that read button, we said it's going to say add. That's our window layout. Gosh, that's a lot, huh? We're going to say window is sg.Window, and it is add two numbers dot layout. This is all from previous lessons, right? You guys already know how this works. This next part, normally you'd put a window read right here, but we're going to put a loop. And this kind of loop is called an event loop. If you ever hear that term, that's what this is. And all it is it's going to sit and read button values, window.Read, right? It's just going to loop and read buttons. And buttons are events. So there is the name event loop where it comes from. So you just sit and read events. In this case, we're going to read if the button is none, then we're going to break out of the loop. And what that is if somebody hits an X on a window, this X, the button value that comes back is none. And it's always important, even if you're on a debugger, give your users a clean exit. It's just good practice. So if the button's none, that's how they get out. And so that's a lot of stuff. So let's run it and see where we're at. I'll look at this. So we have add two numbers, we have our two input fields, and an add button, right? And but these two input fields are huge. The default input field length is pretty big. So the way you fix that is on any of these things, the modifier that you want to do is right there with the element. So in this case, it's a size. And size is in two values, width and height. Width is number of characters, height is number of rows. So number of characters, let's say it's 8 characters wide and it's 1 row long. It's almost always going to be 1 row in whatever you're sizing on our GUIs. Size is 1. We can do things like add fonts to text. Font equal Helvetica 15. Right there with the element. The point is, those modifiers can change so many things. Colors. You should crack open this here document and take a look at what you're working with. It's worth the time. So let's run this and see what happens again. We can put in numbers. Add doesn't do anything yet, except that, look at that. It stays open, right? That's a good thing. Your previous windows would not do that. So now we want to do something with those values. And let's store them in variables so that we can add them, right? And the way we get values from when you have keys like this is that it's no longer in a list. They're in what's called a dictionary. So we want to get num1 is, here's how you read them, values, and then you put in here, instead of like a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, a list, you're going to put the key. So you match the key here with the key here, and magically you get that input thing, input field going to this number. Now there's a problem though. Input fields are text, numbers are int. So we need to change this to an int, or the num1 plus num2 will not give you the result you want. So num2 is int values, and we're going to use in2. So we have our variables. Let's add them up. Answer is num1 plus num2. And finally, we want to output that somewhere, right? So the way that works is that we're going to look up this text field with the key answer. And so we could say that the window.FindElement, we say go find the element, and we give it the key here, which is answer. And once you find that element, change it, do an update on it with answer. Let's run it and see what happens. If we say 2 and 3 and we hit add, we get 5. And if 1 plus 2 is 3. And notice here that this font is bigger. We added that font up there. And so that's it. You can play around with this and have persistent windows.